Hi, today we're going to learn about local storage and session storage inside of Toddle. So what this means is, think about it like this. A user fills out a form, the connection to the internet gets lost, or the user by mistake reloads the page, and all progress is deleted. It's all gone. Now, local storage or session storage, which are both persistent storages, can solve this problem. And today we're going to build a form that uses this principle. So the principle is we have local storage, session storage, and it allows us to persist the data inside of the user's machine/computer locally. So if the page would reload it, the progress would still be there. So let's implement a form with this specific storage pattern. So first of all, we want to go in here and add a form. Now, once we got the form element in here, inside of the form, I just want to add an input of, for example, let's make this an email. We have an email and we can just call this email. Ooh, I didn't delete everything. We call this email, just like that. And now we have the email set in here, and we just copy this input field, paste it under it, and now we make an input field for example, password, and we call that password, just like that. So now what we could do, probably not the best idea to have this persist in storage, but we'll do it anyway. And now we go on layout and give it like a little gap of like 0.5 rem. And first of all, we gotta go in here and we gotta go to the background, and we have to, of course, make it white. It needs to be nice and bright and shining. It looks very welcoming then. And we want to make the text gray 700. We go to the form. We give it a side padding of 1 rem, or oops, maybe 0.75 rem on the inputs and 0.75 rem on the other input. We go to the form, we give it a side padding of 1 rem, so the sides have 1 rem padding, and we do on top and bottom we're padding of 1 rem as well. Or maybe 0.5 rem looks better. Yes, that looks way better. So let's do 0.5 rem. Beautiful. Now the background can be gray 50, and the border can be gray 200, and the radius will be 15, for example. Beautiful. So now let's zoom in a little bit and let's continue our styling. Now, the background of the input can be fully white. Here we go. And we can make the border 7 pixels, and we add like a 100, or maybe a 200 border around it. Beautiful. We do the same thing here. We make this all the way white. Oops, all the way white. And we go in here and the border is 7 pixels, and we add a border color of 200, gray 200. That looks beautiful. So that's great. And now we want to go in here, and the text color in this input should be gray 700 or any other dark color that you prefer. And now we have our input in here. But now when I type in my email, hey at nocodeprocode.com, right, and I were to refresh the site, that progress will be lost, sadly. And we don't want, as you can see, it is lost, but we don't want it to be lost. So what we can do is we can use utilizing local storage / session storage for that. So first, what we need to do is, if we would have a form, we would, of course, need to add a button. We just want to make sure it's all complete. Even though it's just a test, we want to do submit. Here we go. And we give this a width of 100%. And we can give it a border radius of 7 pixels and a background color of blue 100. And we give it a text color of blue 700. And we make sure we center everything. And the font size can be 14. And maybe we want to do it blue 500. Yes, that looks beautiful. So now the form is complete. But what we want to do is we want to still, use local storage. What we would normally have to do is we would, create a variable in here and let's just delete this one, we would create a variable in here for the email that starts out empty, right? And bind it to the input field. So I go to attributes and I go on bind to variable and I bind it to email. Because normally when I type in my email, hey@NoCode.com, right? There is no way that when we would do a form submission that we can get the data in the form. So we have to create a variable that is binded in the attribute section, to the input field. And then if we look at the email variable, we will see the email that was inputted in the form is in this variable. And if I were to update the variable, it would reflect in, the input of the form. But now, since we have it tied to the variable, if we reload the page, it will clear the variable and therefore clear the input. Now, if the variable would initially on page load be, hey, the form input will say, hey, because it is binded to the variable. So the variable here is the secret that we can use to save things in local storage. So first, let's go on this input field here and let's go to events. And you see we have this input event and we already set, while binding it to the variable, this action here was already created for us by Toddle, which is great. So I want to go in here and copy this, click on this and do copy. And I want to, kind of like do a same principle, but not storing it into the variable, but also storing it into local storage, which is like a different section kind of like of your computer. So I click on here and I go to save to local storage. The key will be email. I like to have it the same name as my variable. And for the value, I go to fx on the formula. I paste this in here. And now this will also take the input. So now when I input hey in here, the variable will say hey, as you can see here. But also the local storage will say hey. Now the only downside is the local storage is not visible for us inside of the Toddle configuration. But we can make it visible if we just add a heading on our site and click into the text of the heading, go on fx and look for get from local storage, and the key will be email. And then this should give us the email from local storage, which is hey. So as you can see, this is now tied because on input, we're updating the local storage. This H3 text that is, we can visualize using the HTML on the side, it's not coming from the variable. This is coming from the local storage, which is like a different section of your web app that is like a little, think of it like a little warehouse. Your website has a main warehouse, which are your variables, and it has a secondary little basement where you store data too, but that's not important. You only care about the main warehouse normally in the app. But sometimes you need to get old things from the basement, and this is what local storage is doing. And as you can see on this input here, we set the variable, of course, but we also set the local storage. Because if I now reload the page, we will see that the local storage is persistent. So now, how about we type in an email, hey@NoCode.com, right? We have the email in here. So this input field is, the value of this input field is now based on our variable, which is what it should be. But the variable on page load will be cleared and the local storage will be saved. So what we can do is we need to go outside of our page and we need to go to our email variable. And you see there is like a little fx in our email variable. So what we can do is we can just base this email variable on our get from local storage, and the key will be email. So now it is persistent in this text field as well. So now when I reload the page, you will see that the input of this form continues to be the input I inputted, even if I reload the page, because we store it inside of the local storage of the device. So if I were to update this here, and let's make it .org, for example, and I now were to reload the page will show hey at nocodeprocode.org. And if I change it back to .com and I reload the page, it is now .com and the variable shows this. Because we still need it as a variable because we use variables to then send it to the backend. Because if I now were to do an API call, I would go to add parameter and I would add like the key for email, go on FX. And as you can see, there is no form input section. So I would need to go to the email variable in order to send the email to an API. So this is why we still need to use variables, ideally. So now I can remove the H3. We probably don't want to store the password to local storage for security reasons, but now you know how to do local storage. And local storage is persistent even, this is locally on the machine. You could also do the same thing and change the local storage to session storage. So save to session storage, and the key would be email, and the value would be the same value that you would set in the variable. So I were to paste that in here, just like that. And then I would just go to the variable of email, and I would start on the FX, and I would not go to get from local storage. I would look to get from session storage. The key is still email. And now I, of course, have to type it in here. So let's do hey at nocodeprocode.com, just like that. And now I were to reload the page, and because I'm still in the session, I will have it in here. But the session storage is only on the session, so it can time out. After a few days, if the user clears, their browser history, the session storage will be cleared. If you need a more long-term way of storing that, and you basically never want to let go of this, you may want to change it back to local storage. But this is what local/session storage is doing and how to use it in Toddle. Just to do a simple summary here. You have the input, and on the input event, if I input something into an input field, the characters I type in can be accessed using the event action, event target value. This is how I get the value of it, just so that you know. And then I, of course, need to still set the variable like I would normally do. But before I set the variable, I go to save to session storage, and I go with the key that should ideally be the same name as the variable that will contain this piece of data, right? And then we go to value, and the value will be event target value on input, so that we get the inputted value inside of this input field. And then this is going to save it. But now when I reload the page, I need to set the variable based on the local storage if something in local storage was available. So in order to do that, or session storage, I go to the variable, and I go to fx in the variable, and I go to the get from session storage function, and then it will return the value of the session storage as the initial value of the variable. So now, as we can see, we have the email typed in here, and I can retype it. I can do hey at nocodeprocode.com. And now I exit the page really quick. And now you will see that when the page loads, the input is still in the form. And this is how you store information locally on the user's machine without having to connecting it to a backend, and store it temporarily, because session storage is more temporarily, local storage as well, but if they were to clear their cache, it will be all gone. So this is how you can store information that is not too crucial to improve the user experience on a low level inside of your application in Toddle using local storage/session storage. If you want to learn more about those advanced UI improvements, UX improvements that you can do in Toddle, and if you want to build better web applications and SaaS applications inside of Toddle, you may want to join my daily office hours, where we're going to talk exactly about this 5 times a week in our office hours. And you're going to also get access to clonables, to very extensive courses about those exciting topics. And of course, a community, a supportive community, a help forum, but the main point are the office hours, because you don't just learn from people asking questions, you can also ask your own questions, and we solve your problems or, get you started if you're just beginning out inside of that office hour. And we have everybody in there. We have experts in there. We have JavaScript experts in there. We have, we have just beginners join. It's really made for everyone, because you can never hear the basics enough, and you can never, if you just start, hear things that are too complicated, because it gives you ideas of where you can go with your vision and what you want to build. And I think it's a great combination that we have in that community, in that membership. I would love to see you in there. If you want to join, please go to nocodeprocode.com. The link is also in the pinned comment, in the comments, and in the video description. I would love to see you in the office hours, in the communities, in the courses, help you with all that stuff. But also, thank you so much, regardless if you join or not. Thank you so much for watching this video. Thank you so much for supporting me and my YouTube channel. You don't know how much this really means to me. It means the world to me. And also, thank you so much to the wonderful Toddle team for all their support, for all their jokes we make all the time at the Discord. So just thank you so much for everything. I really appreciate that. I wish you a wonderful rest of your day, and see you tomorrow to more exciting daily Toddle videos. And to everyone in office hours, in the membership, see you tomorrow at office hours, and see you at the course, and see you today at the help forum. Thank you so much for everything. I really appreciate that. Take care. Bye-bye.